Good evening and welcome to Young Rail Professionals Western Region's first webinar of 2021. This time we're learning all about infrastructure monitoring trains, otherwise known as test trains. These are the big yellow trains you see with big flashy lights and recording equipment traveling around the network all across Great Britain, but rarely you ever know what they're actually doing. So I'm delighted to bring along Martin Spinks from Network Rail, who's part of the infrastructure monitoring team, who's going to tell us all about them. So with no further ado, I will hand over to Martin.
Hello, good evening. My name is Martin Spinks. I work for Data Collection Services, which is part of AIS within Route Services. I am a planning and logistics specialist. I work in Trent House, based in the RTC in Derby. Currently, I'm working from the box room at home. My job is a planning and logistics specialist, so I tend to look after all the WTT paths for the class 1s and class 3s for infrastructure monitoring trains, which are commonly known as PLPR or UTUs, which is Playline recognition or ultrasonic testing. We also have the NMT, which is, well, was the new measurement train, but this is currently out of service, having a systems upgrade at the moment. Right, next slide is an overview of infrastructure monitoring. As I said, data collection services is a function within part of asset information, which is route services. We have 12 trains in our fleet, the NMT, 4 PLPR trains, 1, 2, 3, and 4, a TRU, which is the track recording unit, which is basically a 150, 4 UTUs, and a spare UTUS, which is spare. UTU 1 and 3 are also have the SGT 1 and 2 in there, which is the structure gauging train. And we have a little MPV, multiple purpose vehicle, which runs around the country recording S&C, which is switches and crossings. It mainly works in and out of main London termini. They are grouped as high speed, medium speed, and low speed. So you can pretty much guess which train fits into which category. The NMT is a HST, maximum speed 125 miles an hour, so that's high speed. Medium speed are PLPRs 3 and 4. PLPR 1 and 2 can cover high speed or medium speed, so they're shared between the two, and the low speed are all the UTU shifts, because the maximum recording speed is 30 miles an hour. As I said, geometry can record at line speed, but due to the fact that we use lasers, the recording tends to drop out below 15 miles an hour. So if you put a lot of pathing time into trains, we tend to lose recording because it drops below that set speed. UTUs can record at 30 miles an hour and transits at 75 miles an hour. But the slower it goes, the better the recording is, because on a UTU, you have a little recording reel which runs in between the wheel set, it's got like a little plastic rubber tire on. You'll see a picture of the recording equipment later in the presentation. We have 16 data streams that can be recorded across the fleet, so we can get a lot of information from the fleet, and I will go into that as I explain the fleet, as I explain the details of the fleet. I worked it out. This is very rough. We record 750,000 miles per year over 2,200 recording shifts, and these are both WTT paths, which is working timetable paths, and STP paths, which is special traffic paths, which are like one-off paths for that train. We have 306 WTT paths covering both PLPR and UTU shifts. So these are bid in line with the timetable, requirements for Network Rail. So basically, I am like I bid like a TOC does and like a FOC does, and I am subject to the same regimes. All the track in the UK has different recording frequencies from 4 weekly to 24 weekly, and this is determined by the track category. And these are worked out on the annual tonnage and number of services that use the line over a year. So it's very important if there's an increase in passenger traffic over a line, we get to know about it, and we will then, the route engineers will then look to see if a more rigid recording regime is required. These are all explained in Network Rail standards. The one for UTU is NR L2 TRK001, which is visual inspection, ultrasonic and eddy current testing of rails, and track geometry is module 11 of the same standard. All the recording has set timetables taken from when the when it's being recorded off the train to being made available for the track engineer. So if we have a train running tonight, then on Friday morning, the track engineer should have his results from her results from that recording run, and these are sent out and checked by different data teams within route services, AIS route services. There are a number of faults that can be detected by a train run, and I'll talk about these later in the presentation as well. And one thing that IM services can do that no other WTT service can do is we can be timed through section 4 possession opportunities in the engineering access statement. This is because we have an annual plan and we know what trains are running, and the engineering access people also have that plan, so they should plan accordingly to allow the recording trains to run. Because of the nature of the train, it has to be done, and when we do conflict with possessions, then we have to sort of like have a discussion about it. A UTU can record up to 200 miles on one tank of water because the ultrasonic recording is a reel and it's covered in a plastic tire. It needs to make contact with the rail to send the ultrasonic sound waves through the rail. So that's why we need water. And during the winter, this gets very, this gets a bit difficult due to it icing, and also during HTT season the wheels get clogged up with sandite, so we have to sort of like deconflict UTU runs with HTT runs. And the data sets on UTUs has to be changed every 45 miles because of the amount of recording data it holds. If it goes over 45 miles, it will be too much for it. These are the track categories for mainline to branch line. So your Cat 1A track will be your Great Western Mainline, your East Coast Mainline, your West Coast, and your Midland Mainline, and then it goes down through the branch, through the different types of line, and then Cat 4, 4, 5, and 6 are the lowest track category, and there'll be like a branch line that sees the trains like once every couple of days, mainly freight lines, and don't have much traffic over there. Again, these are the recordings. So for geometry, Cat 1A is 4 weekly. So most of our PLPR paths run 4 weekly. It says minimal intervention interval between recordings 10 weeks, but if you're running 4 weekly, then you'll get it. You'll miss it. If you don't get it one time, you'll get it within the 10 weeks. And then Ultrasonic is Cat 1A and Cat 1 are 8 weekly. Cat 2 is 16 weekly, and then we go 24 weekly, 26 weekly, 24 weekly, which is twice a year. Recording data streams, right? Geometry. We have geometry, PLPR, track interval, GSMR, Fraunhofer. So I'll just go. So geometry is basically looks at the track and the state of the track. So we have, it travels over and records whether the track's straight, whether there's a slight dip, twist, because anything like that can lead to a derailment. PLPR is basically a track inspection. So this is we used to have people walking the section, and they would go out in the morning, walk a couple of miles, looking at the track, and then on the way back they'd walk the opposite direction over the other line, and it was done manually, and you'd have to be at the side of the track in running lines, or we'd have to take possession. So PLPR equipment is on the NMT PLPR 1, 2, 3, and 4. You'll see that PLPR 3 runs with the track recording coach, which is a southern coach, and PLPR 4 runs with TIC 2, which is track inspection coach 2. Track interval, basically that looks at the ballast profile, whether we've got high profile. GSMR is radio signaling. So all trains are fitted with ship-to-shore radios. So we have to go around checking to make sure the frequencies work. Because if we don't have, if we lose contact with a radio mast, then we can't get hold of the train while it's in motion. So we'd have to bring the train to a stand, and the driver would have to contact the signalman via the radio telephone. Fraunhofer is a German piece of software, and this is basically non-contact overhead line recording. So it points a blue light out of the roof of the vehicle, and it's like a laser, and it just looks at the overhead, and it doesn't touch it. It doesn't do anything. This quite often gets mistaken for UFOs in the night sky, because if you're not recording, it just points straight up. Points straight up, and if it gets left on, it could be in the middle of middle of nowhere, and people just see a blue light in the sky and wonder what the hell it is. We have a WireWare program, which also looks at the amount of damage the pantographs are doing to the wire. We take a video of it, and then we come down to Mentor, which is our overhead recording vehicle, which is actually a contact. So this actually touches the wire with a pantograph, and we can see how the wire behaves. So any new pieces of line with overhead equipment has to be passed safe to use with a Mentor run. So all the wires that have been put up on the Great Western Main Line, we've had to do a lot of bespoke Mentor runs just to check that it is safe to use and it's been put up correctly. And again, we've got pan and a video. CRIS is conductor rail measurement. So on PLPR3, which runs around with TRC, is a piece of equipment which we mainly use on the southern, which records the third rail for our third rail parts of the network, and it also goes up to cover the Merseyrail network, which is also third rail. Forward-facing video, basically this just takes a video of the line and all the features as the train is going forward. Now, I'm not sure how much this is used now because the TOCs have video fitted as part of their safety equipment for on trains, but we tend to use it for line side vegetation checks to make sure that signal sighting clearance, to make sure nothing's growing over the signals or blocking things. And they're all on the PLPR fleet and track geometry fleet, and this is the ultrasonic UTU fleet. So we've got the ultrasonic testing equipment, the eddy current, we check rail profile, which is also on the TRU, and then the last two are we have a ground penetrating radar, so we know what's underneath the track, because if we have a fault with a dip angle, it could be like a wet bed, so the formation falls, so you get a bit of a dip in the track. But with ground penetrating, we can actually tell what's underneath the track. And LaserFlex is structure gauging. So when I first started on the railway 30 years ago, it was sort of like every new piece of equipment had to be gauge cleared and fit within the loading gauge of the railway. But nowadays, being as we're buying pieces of rolling stock from abroad, they sometimes don't strictly fit our gauge, and sometimes we have to sort of like alter bits and bobs. But this is how we check to make sure that everything is is clear and safe to use. And this page just basically gives the lengths and the lengths of vehicles and what sort of standard formation we're running. So if anything jumps out of you, I'm not going to go through them all, but if anything jumps out at you, pose it in the question and we can try and get back to it. But the only difference is we have the NMT as Mark 3s and HST power cars, but we've managed to get a couple more power cars, and we're running them on PLPR Mark II rakes. There's a slight, we have to do something to the Buckeye coupling, and there's a dispensation we have to get, but we can run HSTs on normal PLPR trains, because when the NMT first came out, it did have a Mark II vehicle in the formation. If you notice, we use DBSOs, which is driver brake second open, the Scott rail shoved offsets. This aids us in being able to use one engine instead of top and tailing all the time. We did have some DVTs, driver van trailers, which were the ex-West Coast stuff. But because of gauging restrictions, we don't tend to use them now, because we've got a generator on board and they're only cleared to run on certain lines. And the only piece of recording equipment they've got is a ride piece of recording, which isn't really in a data stream at the moment. So UTUs are 120 meters in length, PLPs are 120 meters in length, and the NMT is 150 meters in length. But generally, this is the PLP is the timed as LD75, which we are currently looking at a national thing to try and produce new sectional running times and use a more user-friendly timing load for them. You have to excuse the photos. Right, as I said, this is the NMT. We've got 2 buffered ones and 1 non-buffered one. On the front, you can see the little box on the front. That's our forward-facing video camera on the NMT. This can record during daylight hours, and the NMTs mainly record the East Coast, West Coast, Great Western main lines, and we do have, and the Midland main line, and we do have a trip to Skeggy with it. It does a daytime trip to Skegness, which is very funny, but you know, it's just a day out at the seaside for it. No, we have to give it a rest every now and again, and this can record up to line speed 125 mile an hour, and as I said, we've got 2 or 3 XEMR power cars to be used with PLPR 1 to 4, and this has a maximum speed of 100 mile an hour. And then we have for the southern class 73s, mainly used on southern Merseyrail areas due to gauge clearance. Are used on certain lines in Yorkshire. I think it's a line between Harrogate and York, Knaresborough, Harrogate and York. We only 31s were cleared up there, but being as we don't use 31s anymore, we've got we can use 73s now. We've got access to about 5 GBR F1s, and the yellow ones on the right as you look at the screen, they're the network rail ones. They're the ones what have been rebuilt and re-engined for network rail. And we also do a recording for the East London line, but due to limited clearance on the East London lines, we have to put a little step ladder, attach it to the front of the train. So when the drive to evacuate the train, all the train crew get into a cab, and then they have to sort of like shimmy around the side step of the 73, and then get off on the front. It's a bit of a tricky operation if you're not very nimble. Main stalwart off the fleet is class 37s. They run up to a maximum speed of 90 mile an hour, but there's a few that are 80 mile an hour max. They're the main traction used because they're a reliable, go anywhere type of engine, and most people enjoy seeing them. Ours, the ones that we tend to use, have been converted to Blue Star multiple working, so they can drive the DBSOs. I think when the DBSOs first came out, they were done through the lighting cables, but we've had to convert the wiring a little. And then we've got two class 67s, which are 125 mile an hour, and they can, the main traction used for when the NMT is out of service. We can put a 67 on a PLPR shift, PLPR 8. We normally use PLPR 1 because that has mentor in the formation, and they can record at line speed generally in the same times as we use for the NMT without much of a issue. And with 67s, we also use that as to do standalone mentorship. So you can imagine a formation of 67 mentor 67. We can do line speed in that formation because the braking characteristics of a 67, it can brake itself with no issues. And these are the lesser known members of our fleet. The MPV, which has a 13-week cycle, travels all around the country, goes up as far north as Aberdeen, and it goes to Bristol, Paddington. It goes in and out of station terminals, recording the tracks into every single platform, because it looks at the crossing and points. And the TRU, which is basically it's the same design as a 150, that does little branch lines, and it's good for use with branch lines with a low RA, what are basically unit only. And it is the only vehicle along with the TRC which have never actually been in passenger operations. They came purely, and they were came purely and straight into the BR research. Right, here, the next one is the Mark 1 is Mentor. So that's what Mentor actually looks like, and you can see the pantograph. And the reason this vehicle can work on its own is because it's got its own generator, so it can provide its own power. And in the roof, the seats in the roof, so you can actually look out straight over at the pantograph to see how it's behaving and monitor it. But when it's recording with its pantograph up, it's got to be treated as an AC traction vehicle. So when we're planning it, it's not allowed to run into any engineering work that has got a dead isolation, because being as it's a pantograph, if it goes into the dead section, there'll be a big bang and a lot of questions asked. The next vehicle is PLPR 1, and this is one of our track recording vehicles with all the data banks in there. Now, I do apologise, I did not take these photos. I was sent these photos. They're actually at Glasgow Central. So I took most of the photos, but there's a few I didn't. Right, there's these are the geometry faults. So we check for the alignment, the canter of the track, cross level, the curvature, cyclic top, dip, gauge, twist, and vertical top. So how can I put this? If you're traveling on a track and it's like a bit like a roller coaster. So if you go up at one, if you go up and it twists, the way the track twists, being as we used to have short formed wagons, there was a way that a wagon could actually come off, one of the wheel sets could actually come off the track in the twist. And the gauge is where we can either have tight gauge or wide gauge, and this is where the sleepers, the chairs of the rail, move on the sleeper. There are videos to explain all these in more detail, and if I was to play a video for each one of these, it'll be at least 40 minutes of a presentation. But if you want to ask more questions, you can do, or go into more detail, then, you know, I'm quite prepared to do that and play the video later. This slide shows the underside equipment of our trains, our PLPR vehicles. So photos 1 and 2 are the PLPR line scan boxes. So in these we have cameras. Photo 3 is a 2-track laser. So that little circular hole there is actually a laser looking down, and then on the wheel is the VTR, so that's the geometry, so that's measuring how the wheel behaves on the track. Photos 5 and 8 are the actual laser profiling. So they're like a laser, and they look at the inner, their angle to look at the inner rail of the opposite side. And photo 6 and 7 are your actual PLPR photo boxes. This is what Fraunhofer looks like in the night sky. And as I said, it's if you're often out and about and it's switched on and you see a blue light in the sky, more than likely it's one of our, it's either PLPR2 or the NMT. Our trains get stopped no end of times by signallers after a driver of a train that's passed it. Oh, there was a blue light coming out of the roof of that train, or there's a lot of light coming out the side of that train, and they have to say, oh, did you pass such and such, and then they're explaining that it's meant to be coming out of those recording trains. Right, Playline recognition. And what does it do? Well, Playline recognition is basically a train travels along, taking lots of high definition photos as it's doing the line speed on continuous world of travel, and it's like a computer program has been written to look at each photo quicker than the human eye can, and what it does, it says, oh, that doesn't match the definition I have, I'll throw it out as a candidate. So candidates are what the examination inspectors check, and they say yes, it's a fault, or no, it's not a fault. So this one is looking at the pendulum clips, and the purple one is highlighted as missing. So and then examination inspector would come along and say, yes, that's a fault, and we know exactly where that clip is, and it will get reported. So this is the underside of the train from the camera point of view. So you can see at the bottom, you've got your 2 rails and your camera's there. So that's looking in the center of the track, making sure everything's all right. And see every bit of the rail and track bed is covered by all the cameras. So this is the process, one of the processing systems. So along the left-hand side of the is the fault and the measuring. So the computer draws a line of where it is, and if these lines spike at any time, that's where there's a fault. So if you look there, it's actually highlighted. There's a fault where that red line is on this on the top photo. If you look on the second photo, that's where there's a line in there, and that's where it's highlighted. It is actually very difficult to see, and you know, I'm not not the best person to explain it, but if you see this, if you manage to ever get on one of our track recording trains or see this in action, it's quite amazing. Knowing how fast our trains go and they get these razor sharp images. There it is again, and that's it zoomed up. So that's a bit of a dip angle. So what it's done, it's looked, and there's a bit of a dip between the rails, and that's where it's highlighted on the so dip angle right and dip angle left. So that's the right hand side rail and left hand side rail. But we've got the exact mileage. We can pinpoint the exact location that's been taken on the recording. Again, they're looking at the panel clips. So if you look there at the rail, there's a piece of cloth or paper or something over the panel, and it's highlighted that as an possible issue. And if you look there on that slide, we've got an E-clip missing. So right over to the left-hand side, can you see my mouse? It's just there. That's where there's an actual clip missing. Right, we come on to the ultrasonic test vehicles, or UTUs. There are 4 of these in the fleet, and they spare for maintenance and recoveries. We can transit it up to 75 miles an hour, and we record at 30 miles an hour. But on certain bits of jointed track, we've got to reduce the speed to 20 miles an hour. This is because the joints in the track could actually puncture the recording reel. As I said, UTU 1 and 3 has a structure gauging vehicle in the formation, and all UTUs have an unbraked bogie where all the recording equipment sits. So these are usually Blue Star 37s, so you can use them with the DBSO, as the photos show. But when we use them with class 37s over the Merseyrail line or the Harrogate line, we have to go top and tailed. So if we're doing structure gauging on that shift and we've got a top and tail formation, we can't do the structure gauging, because on the structure gauging DBSOs, there's a big light array on the front, which helps measure the actual structures. This is a close-up of the UTU recording equipment. As I said, you've got recording wheels, 2 recording wheels, and they've got a little rubber tire. So when these are planned, we've actually got to stop to lower. We put an up stop in the timings to lower this onto the rail, because if they're put down while it's moving, it could get ripped off. As you can see, there's a little water pipe there. So when the wheel's down, we spray water onto the railhead to give better contact for the electrical recording. And the big piece of equipment to your right is a ground penetrating radar, so that also gives out gives out what's underneath the track. Now, ultrasonic, we're looking, it's like an X-ray of the rail. So an ultrasonic run would actually show cracks within the rail that aren't visible to the naked eye. So if there's a crack in there, if it's left and left and left, it could actually become a broken rail, which we don't want. Below, that's what the rail profiling printout looks like within the recording vehicle. Blue is the inner and red is the outer. And what this looks like is the profile of the rail. So what the actual wheel sits on, and how it's worn. And the next photo is an actual broken rail. I put an oldie one in. The structure gauging is very important to the rail industry, but it can only be done at night. And it's a nice, pretty little light show when we have the SGT out, because there's lasers all over everywhere, and it's quite bright. So the vehicle on the left, has now been withdrawn for traffic, and it was cut up. That's the old structure gauging vehicle that was sandwiched between two coaches, and that was, that was the old way. But now we use the vehicle on the right, which is like a little box, which is laser spinning round and picked up and measured. It's like you throw a ball at a wall, it bounces back, you catch it, and you measure how long it takes. And that's what it does with lasers. Right. If you need to know any more, want to get in touch with me, you can give me a call or email me at martin.spinks@networkrail, and I'll be happy to discuss it or provide more information. For the cranks out there is a Facebook group. It's not run by me. It's got nothing to do with data collection or route services, but it's Test Trains UK Photography and Gen Group. It was set up a number of years ago, and basically it has photos of our trains all over the network doing what they do best, and doing the track recording. So that's all I've got time for. Well, that's all I've got to talk about.
Thank you very much, Martin.
I hope I didn't waffle too much. Did we lose anyone?
It's all good. So we've probably got about 15 minutes for questions or so, and I'm going to start straight away.
Yeah.
A question from a colleague of mine, saying that the test trains clearly record a vast amount of data. How long is the data actually kept for, or do you have the facilities to keep all of it forever?
That's a good question. That is, we can go back a past year, so we can sort of like look back through past records and see and correlate the information of the trains over a set period of time. So we tend to keep it for about a year or so, but it gets archived.
And when it gets archived, is it just kept forever, or after so many years does it then get deleted?
It then gets archived at a computer center, so I don't know how long they have to keep it for. But if there's any incident on the network, can you remember Hadfield, what happened in the 90s when we had this big thing about gauge corners cracking? Well, ever since that, we've sort of like been very stringent with checking the state of the track after any incident to make sure that it was up to scratch, recorded up to scratch, and they do get asked for that data. So it's kept for about a year or so, but I think we could dig it out even more. But as I say, we have compliance records as well.
One for me, obviously, as far as it's not network rail infrastructure, but I noticed on your chart of the different categories of railway that you record track up to 140 miles an hour. Do you ever get commissioned?
25.
The graph, 1A went up to 140. Do you ever get commissioned to go and look after HS1?
Yes, we have HS1 shifts.
What's used to record HS1? Is that bespoke equipment or is it a PLPR UTU?
It's normally PLPR3 or PLPR4. The only issue we have to use their diesels. So there's a thing called the Krups unit, Krups diesel loco, which is basically like, I don't know whether anyone's been to Belgium and seen their Class 77s. It's a bit like one of those. You see them in Dollars Moor Yard, little grey Krups locos. They have top and tailed on them. We have to do some sort of jiggery pokery with the coupling to get them coupled. We also use 2 Balfour BT MPVs to top and tail on a certain shift. And there's a shift that does the connection lines. So there's various connection lines that come on and off HS1 on various locations, and we use Class 66s on those, but we can't use fully fueled 66s. They've got about half a tank because of the curvature and the counter of the track. If it tilts too much, we have a fuel spillage, and basically if you have a fuel spillage on HS1, it's major environmental equipment measures. It's a massive cleanup operation. But we do ultrasonically record HS1, and we also do geometry on HS1. And I believe there was a plan once for one of our trains to actually go through a tunnel, but I'm not sure whether it actually did. One of our trains had to go through when it first opened to commission it.
Now that would have been something to see. I remember seeing photos on the French end of the tunnel. They used a steam engine to test the smoke extraction systems. Is it true that for whatever reason, say a test circuit doesn't run for X amount of weeks, that the railway would then have to close because it would be deemed unsafe?
It depends what sort of test circuit, PLP or
in general. Is there any? If you don't run a train for long enough, do you then have to close the railway until you have checked the track?
How can I say this? Right. PLPR. If we miss a week with PLPR, we're allowed 3 strikes. 3 strikes and you're out. You have to record it on the 3rd time. UTU, it can be mitigated against by the track engineer, but he sort of like takes responsibility. So if we miss a recording, we have to go and recover it within 2 weeks of the date. And if we can't get a recording, it has to be signed off by the track engineer. And basically, if anything happens while he signed it off, he could be in a bit of trouble. But sometimes they do if we don't get a recording, they say they will put a speed restriction on. And that has happened a couple of times. It's been right to the wire. We haven't had a recording. The track engineers put a speed on until we get it recorded. But when that happens, it's sort of like all under control conditions, and it's done via route controls and SEO 24/7. But I've only known that happened about once or twice, and that's when I was a planner for SEO. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it sort of like, it
We
sort of
don't
can
close them.
happen, but there are enough mitigations in place that it probably won't.
Yeah, and for for a track engineer to actually say no trains, he's got to be on a very good footing. Because basically, if he says I'm closing it until I get a recording, they move heaven and earth to get a train over there, so it's not closed. We will get it. Sort of like basically any train that will they'll delay anything to get that recording, because getting a clean recording will we've suffered for those hours to get it. We've delayed X amount of trains, but in the long run, you've saved a lot of delay. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
It is a good. It makes people stand up and think. Put it that way.
Another question for you. How do you decide on what route a test circuit will take? So sort of what this the example given here is that there's a circuit in East Anglia that goes Cambridge to Norwich, the Wherry lines, then down back to Cambridge, then back to the Wherry lines, and then over to back to Norwich. Is it, speaking as a planner myself, I know it can be a push-shove fitting between the services, but do you have sort of certain ways to try and decide what gets done first?
Does he know what the head code is?
We'll find out in a minute. But I suppose, how do you decide on a test circuit is probably a good way to sum it up.
Well, basically, it's sort of like, where the train's stabled and what lines need to be recorded.
1Q98.
It would be one of those. Hold on. Hold on. Right. I don't want to do that. I'll just shut this down. So I need to shut this down. Hold on a minute. End show. Right. Bear with me, caller. I will actually show you a test circuit. 1Q98. I'm trying to think of what I, throw a head code at me, and it's sort of like, yeah, right, okay. Because we work in head codes for the WTT, but we also work in shift numbers. So I've got to translate 1Q98. It is 98, isn't it?
Yeah.
Into a PLPR shift number, and that would be PLP 126. Right. Can you see that? Can you see me route sheet?
Yeah.
Am I sharing that properly?
Yeah, that's all good.
Yeah. Right, good. Right. So basically, this shift starts off at right. So we come out of Cambridge, we record down to Ely, across to Norwich, into Norwich, then we go down, Trowes, Thorpe, go to Great Yarmouth. So we go Cambridge to Great Yarmouth. So that's just basically, it's literally just following on logically as you're building the shift up. We know what lines need to be recorded, and we know roughly how many hours we've got to do it in. Yeah, so it is literally, we know what lines need to be recorded and how we're going to get around them. Yeah, it does. Yeah, I see what it means, but a bit of that's been taken out as well, hasn't it? Because we can't run between what is it? Yarmouth and Echo or somewhere.
The Burnley
But no,
Arms route was closed for a while. I know that much.
yeah, it's just basically how we build the shift up. PLPR trains, they can sort of like, they can run so like 13, 14 hours and crewed accordingly. So you try and get as much recording in on a shift as you can, and bearing in mind this is all PLPR can run within traffic. So this sets off at a fair mode. What time did it set off? No, this sets off at just after 2 o'clock. So this is 2 shifts for on-train technicians. So they'll work the first bit, so like to where would they work to? They'd work to Ipswich. Not Ipswich. More than likely 2 o'clock. They'll go as far as Lowestoft. So they'd have a new set of crew on from Lowestoft. And then they'll work the bit. But it's just, you just sort of like go on and see what needs recording and see what you can get.
It's a logical decision. You sort of like, you're in this area, you need to find what needs recording and find the most efficient way of doing it.
Yeah, it is. It's, and it's also where you're stabled. You know what needs recording. You know how you're going to do it, and if it's you try and do it with less reverse moves. I know it doesn't seem to make sense, but it makes sense to us.
One final question. Sorry, Matt. One final question for you, Martin.
Yeah.
It's one I could answer. STP planners at different train operating companies often find their paths rejected by Milton Keynes for WTT test train paths. Is there any way that we can find out when trains are running in advance? And now my answer would be to email you.
Yes. This is why I'm doing it. This is why I'm doing this. It's sort of like, just spread the word out there. Yes, you can email me. Certain other tops email me and say, "Oh, are you running these dates?" And I can supply, dates of trains running if requested. But I'm not going to say, here's access to my plan. I'm not going to. I'll do instances, but I'm not. To get access to the actual plan, you've got to have a Network Rail log on. So if it was a Network Rail planner at Milton Keynes on a route team, I would say go onto our sort of like hub and take a look for yourself.
And so we have agreements between us at Great Western and yourselves about having WTT trains that conflict, but will be moved on certain dates to allow the test train to record what it needs to record.
Yeah. Platform 6 is it at Exeter?
Platform 6 at Exeter.
Yeah, that's we have sort of one date per timetable where we have to record it.
Yeah.
I mean that's the thing. It's sort of like TOCs use stations as sort of like car parks and for cleaning, and the stable all the trains up, for the start of the service the next day. And we come across, so we actually want to record that platform.
In our defence at Exeter, we haven't had a proper depot for a while.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, I call that about 7 o'clock. Couple of seconds too.
I mean, as I say, you can do you want me to send you this? Do you want me to send you this presentation for you to put out?
And say it's all been recorded, so it'll be uploaded to YouTube shortly by our fabulous assistant Matt Teller here at Young Rail Professionals. And
so if you can send, I mean, if you want to share my email address with people and say if you want to ask any other questions, or even if you want more explanation on what felts are, there are videos online to explain track faults. But as I say, I'm here to answer more questions, and hopefully, if you've found it okay, give me some feedback, because I want to deliver this to Network Rail system operator staff. To try and give them an insight into IM trains. Because sometimes they just delete them off the graph when they're playing trains, but I didn't say that. We're not being recorded now, are we?
We're still being recorded.
Oh no!
Anyway, we will end it there. So thank you all very much for tuning in. I hope you found it as interesting as I did, and I hope to see you all soon.
Oh, thank you. Bye.